So Canada spent $6.4 billion. We hired American workers, we used American steel, we gave the state of Michigan joint ownership of a world-class international bridge at no upfront cost.
And then Donald Trump blocked it from opening, not for security reasons, not for engineering problems, but because a billionaire donor needed protection from competition. A $1 million check to Trump's super PAC appears to have bought exactly that protection. And that's what we're talking about today.
And here's the thing Americans need to hear clearly right now. We did everything right. We negotiated in good faith, we followed every term of the agreement, and we built something extraordinary.
The bridge sitting closed on the Detroit-Windsor corridor is not a failure of Canadian ambition. It is evidence of what happens when donor money reaches the Oval Office.
Now let's explain what this bridge actually is, because a lot of people, especially in the US, don't fully appreciate the scale of what Canada built here. The Gordie Howe International Bridge connects Windsor, Ontario to Detroit, Michigan. It is a 6-lane highway-to-highway crossing designed to serve one of the most critical commercial corridors on the continent. And when we say critical, we mean that in the most literal and economical sense.
Yeah, in 2023 alone, commercial trucks moved approximately $126 billion in trade through the Detroit-Windsor corridor. That single stretch of road handles roughly a quarter of all trade between Canada and the United States by value. So when that crossing is operating below capacity, every extra hour and backed up truck, it costs real money. American money, Canadian money, both.
Now, the existing crossing, the Ambassador Bridge, opened in 1929. 4 lanes, limited shoulders, nearly 100-year-old infrastructure carrying 21st century trade volumes. Let's be clear here. The Gordie Howe Bridge doesn't replace it. It supplements it. A modern second crossing for resilience, for speed, for the business on both sides that have been waiting for this for years. Opening it cuts typical truck crossing times by about 20 minutes. Over 30 years, that saves the trucking industry an estimated $2.3 billion.
Not bad just for driving. And Canada built all of that. This wasn't a joint Canada-US project with shared financing. Nope. Canada financed the entire thing. The crossing itself, the Canadian infrastructure, and the major work on the American side. Because when Prime Minister Stephen Harper, a conservative, and Michigan's Republican governor, Rick Snyder, struck the deal in 2012, the United States wasn't positioned to fund its share up front. So Canada stepped in, Canada carried it, and every piece of that deal was honored.
That deal deserves a full stop here because it is by far one of the most generous infrastructure partnerships in North American history. Michigan receives 50% ownership of a brand new international bridge that Canada paid for with $0 paid upfront by the Americans.
American steel went into its construction. American workers built it. American companies received contracts. Canada covered the full financing and carries all the risk. And once Canada is repaid, including the financing cost, future toll revenues get split evenly between Canada and Michigan.
Michigan gets joint ownership of a $6.4 billion bridge without putting up any of the construction money. American businesses were paid to help build it, and Canada recovers its investment through that toll revenue.
So here's the detail that it should also stop everyone cold, because in 2017, Donald Trump issued a joint statement with Justin Trudeau describing the Gordie Howe Bridge as, and these are his own words, a vital economic connection. So keep that in mind as we get into what he did next.
Yeah, because the bridge is now finished. The roads are connected, customs facilities are ready, workers are done. Invitations to the ribbon cutting were already sent. And then the Trump administration told Canada, oh, hold on there. We want more ownership, more money, more concessions on a bridge that Canada already built, on a deal signed 13 years ago, on infrastructure that was already complete.
Look, you don't renegotiate a contract after the work is finished. If you hire someone to renovate your home and they complete every room to the exact spec you agreed on, you don't look at the finished project and say, I want a better deal before I let you leave. And that people, has a name. It's called a shakedown. And the question we have to ask is, who benefits from this shakedown keeping that bridge closed?
Well, the Ambassador Bridge owners, that's who. The Ambassador Bridge is privately owned by the Moroun family. A single American billionaire family has controlled that corridor for decades, and they fought the Gordie Howe Bridge for just as long. Lawsuits, lobbying, advertising campaigns.
In 2012, Manuel Moroun spent roughly $33 million trying to block it through a Michigan constitutional amendment. They lost. The bridge got built anyway, but they didn't stop fighting.
And can we just pause on how bizarre this is, really? One billionaire family privately owns a major international border crossing and had $33 million available to fight the construction of a competing bridge? Not build another bridge, not improve their own, but just stop everyone else from building one. It's insane.
It certainly is. And then there's more. On January 16th of this year, Matthew Moroun, the son, donated $1 million to Mega Inc., the super PAC supporting Donald Trump. And guess what, Dave? 1 month later, Moroun met privately with Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and lobbied the administration directly about the Gordie Howe Bridge. Surprise, surprise, shortly after that meeting, Trump announced he would not allow the bridge to open unless Canada agreed to new demands.
So think about that. Donation, meeting, blockade. That's the sequence. $1 million to the super PAC, a private meeting with the cabinet secretary, presidential intervention blocking a competitor's bridge. Heck, if an American diplomat saw that sequence of events in another country, they'd label it oligarch corruption without hesitation. Now, we're just asking the same question about Washington that Washington routinely asks about everybody else.
But let's keep on going because Trump's cover story collapses under any real scrutiny.
Yeah, Trump didn't say he was blocking the bridge for the Morouns. No, he offered excuses. Canadian dairy policy, Ontario removing alcohol from provincial liquor stores, Canada's trade conversations with China. These were his stated justifications for blocking a bridge built under a 2012 agreement between two entirely different administrations that we paid for. He also claimed that the United States receives absolutely nothing from the bridge, which is demonstrably false. American workers built it and earned a paycheck from it. American steel is in it. Michigan owns half of it. American trucking companies say 20 minutes per crossing. Michigan will eventually collect shared toll revenue. Claiming America gets nothing from a bridge half owned by the state of Michigan is either a deliberate misdirection or a staggering misunderstanding of a deal his own administration inherited.
So what does Canada actually do now? Because Canadians watching this are understandably asking why we cannot simply open a bridge that we paid for and finished. Well, the answer is that an international crossing still needs American customs operations and federal cooperation on the other side. So we cannot operate both countries' borders by ourselves.
But that does not mean Canada has no leverage. The first step here is refusing to reward the blockade. No additional ownership, no new toll arrangement, no unrelated trade concession in exchange for permission to use the bridge we already built under a signed agreement. Because the moment Canada pays a ransom, every future agreement becomes another opportunity to demand one.
And to be clear here, Prime Minister Carney says he's not connecting this directly to the CUSMA negotiations. He said he would distinguish between the two. And that's the right approach because the United States should honor the bridge agreement.
But it absolutely belongs in the larger conversation about whether the United States can still be trusted to honor long-term agreements. If Canada enters another 16-year trade arrangement, it needs enforceable rules. It needs real dispute settlement, and it needs protection against a president reopening yesterday's contract because today's donor wants a different result. And this is where Americans have enormous power. People in Michigan can call their governor, their senators, and their members of Congress. Trucking companies, auto manufacturers, unions, and local businesses can demand that Washington stop protecting one private toll bridge at everyone else's expense.
Because, let's be honest, Dave, waiting for Congress to suddenly ride in and save the day is not much of a strategy. But economic pressure from Michigan is different. When truckers, manufacturers, and auto workers start saying the delay is costing them money, jobs, and time, the White House has a much harder time pretending it's all about Canada.
Because this should not become Canadians fighting Americans. It should be Canadians and Americans fighting the idea that one billionaire donor gets to overrule a signed international agreement and hold a major trade corridor hostage. We gave Michigan a world-class asset it could not afford to build on its own. The bridge sitting closed right now is not a Canadian failure. It's a referendum on whether American agreements are worth the paper they're actually written on.
And if you're any country looking at the United States as a negotiating partner right now, you're watching this bridge. Because if a signed, bipartisan, multi-decade agreement can be retroactively renegotiated after the work is done because a donor needed a favor, then no signed agreement is actually final when it comes to the USA.
And that changes how every country approaches building something jointly with the Americans in the future.
So the question we're putting to you is this. Should Canada refuse every new concession and insist that the original 2012 agreement be honored exactly as written?
And should Congress investigate whether a political donor influenced the decision to keep this bridge closed?
Tell us what Canada and Americans in Michigan should do next, because we love hearing from you.
And if you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a like, a hype, and a share so other people can weigh in as well.
And check out our merch store for fun Canadian merch, and we shall see you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.